Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dan, the voice behind ThatKaitoDan, and welcome to a very special RWBY analysis video. In celebration and thanks to you all for now helping me reach over 600 subscribers, I'm taking a deeper look at the RWBY fandom's world of romance with analysing the RWBY ship names. The romance support in the fandom has grown immensely over the years, with the Rooster Teeth lot even getting involved, and the fact that it's even made some marks in the show. But one aspect that I've always loved is the creative names to represent a relationship. Over the next few videos on this topic, I'm going to share with you some of the inspiration behind the unique names that the fans have made, and there's a lot of them too. Seriously, I found over 500 ships, and some of them even have more than one name too. However, a few things first. For starters, I'm only going to look at a maximum of 2 names per ship, and not always the names that is most commonly defining that ship as well. If I did them all, we'd be here all day. But the other names that I won't look at will still be on the screen so you can see what is which. Next, while I have done my best to look for the reasons for the names, I may be wrong, so please forgive me there. Same if I miss a ship or a name. Also, some of these ships may contain content that will either be adult themed or have questionable content. And finally, due to some of the characters featured as well as some of the names and the meanings, there will be content that may spoil the show for you if you haven't seen up to RWBY's 3rd volume, as that is the most recently completed volume as of this posting, so please watch at your own risk. With all that said, let the romance begin. RWBY and Weiss. This ship is most commonly known as White Rose, which is simple to explain given Weiss's main colour theme and RWBY's rose motif, though there's also Osiria, another fittingly flowery name since it has both red and white colours. RWBY and Blake. From white to black now, Blake's major colour can mix with RWBY's red to make the dark red maroon colour. But most know this ship as Ladybug, the insect notable for its red back with black spots. RWBY and Yang. Yep, there's a ship of the sisters in Team RWBY, though the name Strawberry Sunrise has also been used to tag these two as more of a sisterly love, which refers to a drink that Yang is quite fond of, with the strawberry representing RWBY. But for those who are thinking of something more, Enabler is the name of those enabling a different kind of love. RWBY and Jean, the socially awkward pair as Jean dubbed them at the dance. Fair for these two who aren't exactly the strongest socially. For those who'd like to see the two captains get together though, there's also Lancaster, a reference to one of the houses involved in the War of the Roses, which not only had its fair share of knights like Jean, but the name of this house also had the symbol of a red rose. RWBY and Nora. These two can be very dash happy and love their sugary treats, so Sugar Rush is a very fitting name here. Hammer and Sickle also works, referring to the symbol most known during the Russian Revolution, but also an obvious highlight of the pair's melee weapon forms. RWBY and Pyrrha. The two redheads now, and one of the few ships to still mainly use the idea of just combining the names together for a ship name, this one being Pyrrha. However, one could also use Milk and Cereal, as RWBY's noted as a milk drinker, and of course Pyrrha's face was once slapped on a cereal box. RWBY and Ren. RWBY's rose petals can combine with Ren's lotus emblem to make the name Lotus Petals, though I also like the name Moulin Rouge too, a reference to the French cabaret club and musical Moulin Rouge, by taking on rouge being French for red and the inspiration behind Ren's character being Ha Mulan. RWBY and Sun. One ship that is actually a thing in real life if you consider their actors are married, but in the show there's the name Suns and Roses, obviously referring to the popular band Guns N' Roses. The other name that I'll note also being Sunset, the phase of the sun's travel, notable for some red and yellow tints. RWBY and Scarlet. Since RWBY and the pirate god lad have red similarities, it's no wonder that a ship name for them can be Shades of Red. There's also Sailor's Delight, from the phrase Red Sky at night, Sailor's Delight, Red Sky at morning, Sailor's Warning. RWBY and Sage. Sage's name brings in a lot of his ship names referring to spices or plants, like here with either the red spice paprika or danshen, the plant otherwise known as a red sage. RWBY and Neptune. Neptune has a lot of water-based ship names for his stuff, like with this pairing with RWBY making Red Sea, like the one in our world. There's also Rosewater, a fittingly named kind of water that's steeped in roses for a unique flavour. RWBY and Velvet. The Bunny Girl and the Caped Reaper together can bring us either red velvet, like the cake, or Buns and Roses, if you want to bring back the Guns N' Roses reference. RWBY and Cocoa. RWBY paired with Team Coffee's stylish shooter can make some chocolate milk, which, who knows, could actually be the milk that RWBY drinks. If not, then she could at least enjoy some cherry cordial, a fruit-filled chocolate snack. RWBY and Fox. Red Fox is an easy one to make based on RWBY's colours and, well, Fox being Fox, though if you want something a bit more fancy, try Madra Rua, which is the same but in Gaelic. RWBY and Yatsuhashi. RWBY might be compensating for her short size if she dated the giant Yatsu, though I guess for a sniper like her, she could make use of his height to make for a good vantage point to scope out enemies. RWBY and Cinder. If Cinderfall could corrupt Miss Rose, you could call that pair Fallen Petals. For those who are familiar with the Mario games though, the combination of Cinder's flames with Miss Rose can make for a classic Fire Flower power-up too. RWBY and Salem. Only one name found for this unique pair, which is Blood. The best I could surmise though for this is blood red roses are sometimes used in witchcraft. RWBY and Roman. These two have butted heads often, but if people could have thought that some romance could have come from this, there's Rosewick, a combination of the two's last names. Or, for my fellow Achievement Hunter fans, there's R&R Connection, the team name once used by Ryan Haywood and former member Ray Narvaez Jr. RWBY and Emerald. The two blade-rocking huntresses are named after notable gems, so there's that, but since we also know Emerald is a known thief, there's also Jewelry Thief. RWBY and Mercury. If you ship RWBY with Emerald's partner though, you could have the combination of RWBY's speed and Mercury's trademark color of silver to make the comic book character Quicksilver. Or there's a Poison Rose if you bring in Mercury poisoning. RWBY and Neo. RWBY managed to survive Neo's onslaught up in the sky, but if you wish to see them as a couple rather than opponents, maybe you could see them having a date over some cookies and cream ice cream, or some cassata, taking on board RWBY's fondness for cookies and Neo's ice cream element for the first one, or the second one being a treat that has cream and candied fruit as some of its ingredients. RWBY and Adam. RWBY's red and Adam's bull motifs make an obvious Red Bull reference name, but you could call back to the magical wilting rose from the Beauty and the Beast story that marks the state of the curse which affects the beast, the character that Adam is based on. RWBY and Ozpin. Since it's a name that Ozpin himself seems to refer to RWBY as, this honest young lady is shipped with the headmaster under the name Simple Souls. RWBY and Glinda. We got a lady in red and a magical master. If you combine the two together, you can make a red mage, kinda like the RPG class. There's also the RWBY slippers from the Wizard of Oz's tale where Glinda's inspiration is from. RWBY and Oobleck. Oobleck's often got himself a drink in hand, and RWBY herself has said that she takes her tea with cream and 5 sugars. Both of these two are also very quick on their feet, possibly hitting Mach 5 levels of speed if they wanted. RWBY and Port. Fortified Wine is one optional ship name for the pair of RWBY and the man that she once dubbed in a picture Professor Poop. That kind of wine is when spirits are added to it, like say the red coloured brandy to some port wine. RWBY and Ironwood. RWBY made a good impression on James in the past, but I doubt the metal-bearing general would like any reddish rust on his metal parts. Other than that, there's also Redwood, which is a subfamily of trees. RWBY and Penny. One of the cutest pairs in the shows before, well, things happened. It was hard to not like these two goofs, both living up to their ship name of Nuts and Dolts, a play on nuts and bolts due to Penny's synthetic body. I've also seen the metallic mechanical rose being a name tossed around as well. RWBY and Ciel. If people shipped RWBY with Penny's partner Ciel though, they could use Miss Soleil being strict on time and RWBY being super fast to make the gaming mechanic QuickTime event. For those big in the Rooster Teeth community though, maybe the other big animated show from the group can lend its name. The colors of the girls giving us red versus blue. RWBY and Crow. They share the same family, the same fondness for capes, and they both probably show up for scythes at Scythes R Us, and this pair of uncle and niece that can also be called Harvest Moon, the name of a farming simulating game series, as well as focusing on the crescent moon shape of the harvesting tool scythe. RWBY and Summer, a real Oedipus mother romance complex indeed. For this we also have special eyes, given the pair sharing the rare silver eyes power. RWBY and Tai Yang. Even Tai can't escape having a ship with RWBY, though the group of fans who think he's a quite attractive dad too might agree with the idea that he's ranked as a dad they'd like to fool around with. So instead of milk, this pair can use DILF and cookies. RWBY and Winter. An older female Schnee linked with RWBY must mean that this pair is a whiter rose than the Weiss involved white rose ship, though hopefully not too snowy white or it may become a frozen rose. RWBY and Junior. Ugh, there's a bit of an icky reference to make, but it does fit. The young RWBY catching the eye of Junior means that Pedo Bear would be the ship name for this one, since Junior is based on the youngest of the 3 bears from the Goldilocks tale. RWBY and Militia. This one is kind of interesting. We got Prototype now, since Militia's attire was actually based on the original clothes designed for RWBY. RWBY and Melanie. And because of that previous ship, we've got version 2 for RWBY's ship with the other Malachite, since Melanie's attire is actually based on Weiss's original design. Thus this pair kinda makes it a second version of the RWBY Weiss ship. RWBY and Cardin. Cardinal Red is a shade of red, kinda like RWBY, and he's also a bit of an abusive dick. Thus, 50 Shades of Red, a reference to the 50 Shades erotic fiction series. Cardinal is also a kind of red bird, thus Crimson Wings. RWBY and Russell. Thanks to the thrush part of Russell's name, we've got the ship name Rosebush, which is another type of flora. RWBY and Dove. Here we have Gilded Rose, gilded being something covered thinly in gold, like the colour of Dove's hair. RWBY and Skye. The first instance now of a ship name being used more than once, this one being Sunset, a very nice reddish tint sight in the sky indeed. RWBY and Neon. A gal like Neon might want to stick to the dance club on her nights out and avoid any RWBY coloured red light districts, a particularly adult area of the city nightlife entertainment scene. Better off just hanging out with RWBY for some speed skating. RWBY and May. Speaking of speed, combine RWBY's quick semblance power with both girls' sniper skills and you get Quick Scope, some very fast shooting that would please any happy campers stowing away in one location during their firing. RWBY and Tuckson. Yay, Tuckson's not forgotten by the fans, even if it's just in terms of shipping. Maybe before his death, RWBY might have been fond of using a semblance for some speed reading through the comics in his store. RWBY and the Grim Dragon. Yeah, the Grim Dragon gets involved in here too. Nicknamed Kevin by the fans, this dragon paired with Little Miss Rose gives us one thorny dragon. Yes, I said thorny, not the other word. Weiss and Blake. More from Weiss now, and pairing her up with the faunus that she once had a bit of an altercation with in the past means their trademark colours can be used for the ship names Checkmate, like in chess, or Monochrome, the black and white visual tone effect. Weiss and Yang. If you think the Ares and the Spitfire would make a good pair though, there's the mixes of hot and cold with either freezer burn, or you can go for Weiss Krispies, I guess Remnant's version of Rice Krispies. Weiss and Jean. If Weiss actually did take up Jean on his attempts to court her, we could have had a white knight couple between the swordsman and the girl that he once called Snow Angel. Weiss and Nora, the heiress and the queen of the castle. Nora's hammer could be handy in making some crushed ice, or like her inspiration Thor, could use to bash some frost giants in. Weiss and Pyrrha. Weiss actually wanted to pair up with Miss Nikos early on in their Beacon days, but if she wanted to romantically pair up, you could tag team their last names for Schneekos, or go up to the cold north via Pyrrha's mastery of polarity to reach the North Pole. Weiss and Ren. Like with RWBY, Ren's lotus symbol gets used here for the ship name White Lotus. Weiss also shares a clothing-based similarity with Ren like she does with the combat skirts with her and RWBY, the heiress and Ren both having long combat sleeves on their fighting gear. Weiss and Sun. Weiss isn't really too fond on Sun, but if she changed her mind, they could make the pair based on the band Arctic Monkeys, given her cold traits and Mr. Wukong being a monkey boy, or maybe she just needs more sunscreen to deal with two suns. Weiss and Neptune. These two hit it off pretty quickly actually when Neptune first arrived in Vale, though Neptune's flirting with other girls might mean that this ship will follow the same fate as the Titanic, a famous ship that once tragically got rocked by an iceberg. Weiss and Scarlet. Perhaps Weiss might prefer a sea traveller over a sea god. Icebreaker is one ship name for use, referring to the type of ship that is capable of crushing through thick ice in its path on any frozen ocean. Weiss and Sage. If not that one, maybe she'd like Sage, trading in her ice cold attitude for some spice cold instead. Puns aside, there's also peppermint, a nice minty cool flavour and plant. Weiss and Cocoa. White mixed with chocolate for this pair can give you some yummy white chocolate to enjoy. These two divas could also savour some Godiva's luxury Belgian chocolates too. Weiss and Velvet. Velvet was saved in Volume 3 thanks to Weiss, so that's gotta be a big moment for fans of either White Velvet or Snow Bunny, the names taking in white and snow aspects from Weiss, plus Velvet's name and animal type. Weiss and Fox. The obvious name here being a Snow White Arctic fox, but for something a bit more interesting, there's Scarface, the popular film used here due to both of these two having some notable scars. Weiss and Yatsuhashi. Yatsu is basically the mountain of the entire cast, so if paired with Weiss, their ship name could be the snowy-peaked Mount Everest. However, since Yatsu's name actually comes from a Japanese treat, there's also mochi, a kind of Japanese rice cake. Weiss and Penny. Penny's metallic nature and the Ice Queen Weiss's noble environment does lead into some cold hard cash being splashed around, though there's also another mix of metal and cold, that being the good old refrigerator. Weiss and Cinder. Here we have fire and ice paired up, making for some possible white ash falling instead of any snowfall. Weiss and Emerald. Often paired up in fights during the openings, maybe a thief like Emerald might want to go for the crystal clear white coloured diamonds if she wanted to go for the chance at pinching at the Schnee family jewels. Weiss and Mercury. I'd imagine Weiss might have cold feet with any kind of confession to anyone, let alone the master kicker Merc. Though if she did, she'd obviously hope for some positives to come from that moment, rather than any negatives, like the cold read on a mercury-filled temperature meter. Weiss and Roman. One name for these two is Schneezar, based on Weiss's last name mixed in with the last name of a very famous Roman, Julius Caesar. If you want a name based on something in their show though, how about tying the Schnee Dust Company to the dust store that Roman pinched in the very first episode, From Dusk Till Dawn? Weiss and Neo. If you swap Roman for his partner Neo though, for a Weiss ship, how about the obvious name being the helping of some Weiss cream, or maybe having too much might have been a bad thing since you might get a brain freeze. Weiss and Adam. Frostbite is a fitting name for these two, mixing in a hated injury from severe cold with an often hated beast in the world of RWBY. There's also a cool reference to a cool game, Mirror's Edge, a callback I'm sure to the sharp-edged blade of Adam's sword and the title of Weiss's trademark song, Mirror Mirror. Weiss and Junior. Junior is again noted as having bear elements to him, so it makes sense that Polar Bear is the ship name for the pair of him and the Ice Queen. Weiss and Salem. Though with the pair of said Ice Queen and Salem the Wicked Witch, who's draped in black, we would get some black ice instead. Weiss and Militia. Militia's claws would make for some useful chisels when it comes to carving up some ice. Weiss and Melanie. And as said before, Melanie's attire was based on the original design clothes for Weiss, thus the ship name What Once Was. Weiss and Cardin. Well, Cardin's inspiration was a holy cardinal, so it's okay that we get some holy ice with this pair. Both are very prideful too, and notable for some bouts of prejudice, thus another ship name being Pride and Prejudice, like the famous book. Weiss and Russell. Both fighters have dust usage in their weapons given the barrels on their blades, so there's a lot of dust being used between these two. Too much though, and we may get another Dust Bowl, a severe dust storm that once hit the US and Canada back in the 1930s. Weiss and Dove. We got a boy named after a bird and a young girl with the singing voice of an angel. Pair them up and we get Songbird. Weiss and Skye. A lot of grim white clouds in the sky could definitely lead to some weather reports of overcast. Weiss and Winter. Another ship name with two sisters, this time we've got the Schnees, or I guess the Schneeblings. Though I do like the use of Gesundheit as a ship name, a phrase often used when someone sneezes. Weiss and Crow. What if Weiss dated her partner's uncle? That would give us either Scotch on the Rocks, an alcoholic beverage with a lot of ice in it, or perhaps a dusty old crow, the nickname that Ozpin gave the huntsman that works here given Weiss's dust connections. Weiss and Ozpin. Speaking of Ozpin, shipping him with Miss Schnee gives us Frozen in Time, thanks to Weiss's cold touch and Ozpin's apparent time elements. Beyond that, there's also Mithranda, the name given to the wizard Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings tale by the elven noble lady in white, Galadriel. Weiss and Glinda. Both of these ladies use glyphs in combat, thus the words used also here as a ship name. Plus the Ice Queen and Glinda's weapon can also give us some Cool Whip, a brand of whipped cream. And no, I'm not making that Family Guy reference. Weiss and Oobleck. Oobleck may take inspiration by a Weiss cold blizzard storm for a drink idea, or maybe just go for a nice ice cold coffee with his mug instead. Weiss and Port. Port loves to boast about his fame as a hunter, and Weiss's family has fame to spare as well as fortune, thus fame and fortune. Though a nice ship that's used for these two is the Best You, taking on board the goal that Port aimed Weiss to try and achieve during her outrage early on in the years at school. Weiss and Ironwood. She's a snow-based miss and he's a general. Pair them up and James may gain himself a snow patrol force. Another tree-based name for Ironwood that also comes into focus is Birch, a kind of tree that also is quite capable in the cold weather. Weiss and Raven. Raven's black colours can lead to some black snow if paired up with a girl who, like her, has a bit of a cold exterior when socialising with others. Weiss and Summer. I guess if Weiss can't get Ruby, then there's always her mother? Yeah, that's weird. But anyway, summer brings in a lot of sun, which ain't exactly the best weather for a snow queen, leading into a lot of melting ice, I'm sure. Weiss and Neon. A girl with so many colours on her look like neon might lead to her going for a nice cold rainbow snow cone if the two Atlesians hung out. Despite their differing attitudes and lifestyles, they would definitely live up to the idea that opposites attract. Weiss and Flint. Or if Weiss preferred the other known member of Team Funky, maybe Flint could play some cool jazz for the frosty female. There's also Coal Dust, Cole's last name working in with the Schnee Dust Company element that ran Flint's father out of business. Weiss and Ciel. Ciel's azure tints and her sky-based name works with the snow of Weiss to make some blue ice. Weiss and Tuckson. Tuckson's book trade might be home to every book under the sun, but would any books he have come with any blank pages as white as Miss Schnee's snowy look? Weiss and Banesaw. These two clashed on the train, but thanks to the burly White Fang member's chainsaw weapon, people could ship the two and call them ice sculpting. Also, for the sake of speed, the White Fang lieutenant will be referred to his fan nickname of Banesaw moving ahead. Weiss and Mr. Schnee. Yep, some really weird daddy issues here, with a pairing of daddy and daughter Schnee. Weiss and May. If I'm right, the name Useless Lesbians comes from this meme image, joking that Weiss's voice actress Kara is saying that Weiss is useless at being, or at least admitting to being, a lesbian. May's part in this comes in with another bit of fan art teasing that May also has her own bit of inner battling going on in terms of liking girls. Weiss and Zwei. Unlike Blake, Weiss is actually approving of Zwei. I guess people decided that's enough reason to give them a ship name, thus the combination of Zweiss. Weiss and the Grim Dragon. Even Weiss gets paired up with a Grim Dragon too, making the ship name Blue Eyes White Dragon, after the notable card from the Yu-Gi-Oh series. There's a lot of ship names, folks, and we haven't even scratched the surface yet. Click the available links down below to jump to the next part that you want to go to, and be sure to follow me on Twitter at ThatKaitoDan to keep up to date on any news, updates, among any kinds of other stuff that I post. Until then, have a good day or good night, and peace out.